We spend our entire lives building our independence. We work, we build homes, we raise families. But there is a terrifying reality that awaits many of us at the end of the road. A time when our bodies fail, our memories fade, and we are forced to place our fragile lives into the hands of strangers. We trust nursing homes to be sanctuaries. We trust the nurses to be angels of mercy. But sometimes, the devil wears scrubs. The following story was sent to me by a subscriber who wishes to remain anonymous. They recounted the events surrounding their aunt, a woman I'll call Susan, and a series of events that took place about 15 years ago at a care facility in the Pacific Northwest. It's a reminder that sometimes the supernatural isn't the thing you should be most afraid of. Susan was a fiercely independent woman. She never married, never had children. She was a career woman, strong-willed, the kind of person who never asked for help. But time is undefeated. By her late 60s, after her parents passed, Susan realized she was alone. Not wanting to be a burden on her distant nieces and nephews, she made a pragmatic decision. She sold her house, liquidated her assets, and bought a 20-year care package at a reputable facility we'll call Pine View Manor. At first, Pine View seemed perfect. It was nestled in the woods, quiet with manicured gardens. Susan, initially afraid of the loneliness, actually thrived. She made friends, she played bridge. For a few months, it felt like a retirement vacation. But then, the fog rolled in. It started small, walking out of her room to go to the cafeteria only to forget where she was going halfway down the hall. Conversations looping in circles. Then the medication incidents. A month's supply of blood pressure pills vanished in a week. She couldn't remember taking them. The diagnosis came swiftly. Early onset Alzheimer's. It's a cruel disease. It strips away your credibility. And that is what makes this story so terrifying. Because when you lose your mind, no one believes you when you say you're in danger. Enter the angel of Pineview. Let's call her Helen. Helen was the head caretaker for the memory care unit. She was a heavy-set woman, mid-40s, with a motherly smile that seemed permanently plastered on her face. Everyone loved Helen. She was the one who volunteered for extra shifts, the one who held your hand when you were scared, the one who managed the difficult patients without ever raising her voice. Susan was assigned to Helen's care. And thank God, right? Because Susan was deteriorating fast. It began with the hallucinations, or what everyone thought were hallucinations. Susan told the staff she saw someone watching her during the day out in the garden near the lemon groves at the back of the property. She described a tall, gaunt woman with wild, matted gray hair wearing a dirty green hospital gown. Susan, despite her failing eyesight, insisted the woman was staring at her. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of her. Susan walked towards the lemon grove. As she got closer, the smell hit her first, a foul, rotting stench, like roadkill left in the summer sun. She got close enough to see the woman's face, and she froze. The woman in the green gown looked like she had been broken. Her skin was covered in deep lacerations, but the worst part was her jaw. It was unhinged, dislocated, hanging loosely against her chest, swinging slightly with the wind. The entity tried to speak, but with a broken jaw, all that came out was a wet, gurgling sound. Susan screamed. She screamed until her lungs burned. Staff rushed out. Nurse Helen was the first on the scene, wrapping her arms around the trembling old woman. "It's okay, Susan, it's okay. There's no one there." Later, in the common room, the whispers started among the other residents. "She saw her," one old man whispered. "She saw Mrs. Gable."
Legend had it that Mrs. Gable was a former resident, a difficult woman with dementia who hated the facility. She was known for trying to escape. 2 years prior, she had vanished, just walked off the property, they said, run away. They never found her. The The rumor was that her ghost now haunted the lemon grove, driving anyone who saw her into madness. And it seemed Susan was next. The daytime sightings were bad enough, but the nights were pure hell. Susan began to dread the sunset. She told the doctors that if she forgot to pray before bed, she would come. Sleep paralysis, that's what the doctors called it. Susan described waking up in the dead of night, unable to move a muscle. Her arms felt pinned to her chest, crossed like a mummy. She couldn't turn her head. She couldn't scream. And standing right beside her bed, looming over her, was the woman in the green gown, Mrs. Gable. The ghost would lean down, that broken, hanging jaw inches from Susan's face, staring with dead, milky eyes. Susan would try to scream, but her voice was muffled, like something was jammed in her throat. Just a low, panicked whimper. Night after night, the same dream, the same paralysis. But then the dreams started to leave marks. One morning, Nurse Helen was bathing Susan and found massive dark bruises on her ribs and arms. "Oh, Susan," Helen sighed, shaking her head. "You've been thrashing in your sleep again. Or are you doing this to yourself?" The narrative was set. Susan was losing it. She was agitated, confused, perhaps even self-harming out of frustration. The doctors increased her sedatives. "It's just the progression of the disease," they told her family. "She's imagining threats that aren't there, and she's hurting herself in her confusion." Who would believe a dementia patient claiming a ghost punched her in the stomach? Only Nurse Helen listened. "I believe you, honey," Helen would say, smoothing Susan's hair. "I'll get you a protective charm. I'll bring some holy water." Helen was the only lifeline Susan had, the only one who didn't look at her like she was crazy. Things escalated. Susan developed strange, specific phobias. If she saw a lemon, just a regular yellow lemon in the cafeteria, she would have a full-blown panic attack. She'd shake uncontrollably, sweat pouring down her face. If she saw someone wearing a long-sleeved jacket or a sweater with long arms, she would scream, "Get away! Don't touch me!" It was bizarre behavior, even for Alzheimer's. Susan felt trapped. The ghost of Mrs. Gable was getting violent. In her dreams, the ghost wasn't just staring anymore. She was beating her, heavy fists raining down on her frail body while she lay paralyzed, unable to defend herself. She knew she was going to die. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday in November. Susan had seen the green lady all day. Everywhere she looked, in the hallway, in the reflection of the window, in the bathroom mirror, the ghost was closer than ever. Terrified, Susan begged Nurse Helen, "Please, Helen, don't leave me alone tonight. She's going to kill me. I know it." Helen smiled that warm, motherly smile. "All right, Susan, I'm off the clock, but I'll stay. I'll sleep in the chair by your bed. You'll be safe tonight." Susan felt a wave of relief. She took her meds, lay back, and drifted off, knowing her guardian angel was watching over her. Susan woke up. The room was dark. She couldn't move. Her arms were pinned tight across her chest, her legs were bound, and there, standing over her, was the silhouette. But this time, the ghost wasn't empty-handed. Susan saw the glint of metal in the moonlight. A hammer. Panic exploded in her chest. She tried to scream, but her mouth was full. Something sour and hard was jammed deep into her jaw, forcing it open, gagging her. The figure raised the hammer. Wham! A crushing blow to her shoulder. Susan's mind screamed, but her body was a statue. Wham! Another blow to her thigh. The pain was blinding, sharp, and very, very real. This wasn't a dream. Through the tears, Susan's eyes adjusted to the dark.
She looked up at the attacker. It wasn't the green lady. The silhouette was too heavy, too solid. The figure leaned in close, and a whisper cut through the silence. "You should have just gone to sleep, Susan." It was Helen. The shock of betrayal gave Susan a surge of adrenaline that shouldn't have been possible. She wasn't fighting a ghost, she was fighting a human. She thrashed, twisting her body with everything she had left. She rolled off the bed, hitting the floor hard. The impact loosened the binding on her legs. She scrambled up, blind with terror, and ran. She burst into the hallway, screaming, or trying to. The object in her mouth reduced her cries to pathetic, muffled chokes. She grabbed the metal railing of the corridor and banged her hand against it. Clang, clang, clang. She needed noise. She needed witnesses. She heard heavy footsteps behind her. Then, a flash of white light and a sickening crack against the back of her skull. Susan hit the ground. As she drifted out of consciousness, her vision blurred. She described a sensation that sounds impossible. She said she felt like she had two heads. She reached up to touch her skull, and her hand brushed against another face. Another face, lying right next to hers on the floor. It was the green lady, Mrs. Gable, whispering into her ear. Almost didn't make it. Then, everything went white. When Susan woke up, the light was blinding. She was in a hospital bed, not the nursing home, a real hospital. There were tubes in her arms. Doctors and police officers were standing at the foot of the bed. Her first instinct was to cry out for help. "Helen, where is Helen?" She didn't know what was real. Was Helen the attacker? Was it the ghost? Was she crazy? A police detective stepped forward. "Ma'am, you're safe now. Nurse Helen is in custody." The truth that came out in the following weeks was more horrifying than any ghost story. There was no ghost. Nurse Helen, the angel of Pineview, was a sadist. She targeted patients with Alzheimer's and dementia because they were the perfect victims. Who would believe them? When she was stressed or angry or just bored, she would torture them. The details explained everything. The sleep paralysis. It wasn't supernatural. Helen used customized straitjackets made from modified sweaters with extra long sleeves to bind the patient's arms behind their backs or across their chests. That's why Susan had a panic attack every time she saw a lemon. The inability to scream. Helen would force a whole, unpeeled lemon into the patient's mouth and tie a cloth over it. It kept the jaw open and muffled any noise. That was why Susan had a panic attack every time she saw a lemon. And Mrs. Gable, the green lady, Helen had murdered her 2 years prior. Mrs. Gable had been a difficult patient who fought back. Helen snapped, beat her to death with a hammer, and buried her body in the lemon grove behind the facility. To cover her tracks, Helen would sometimes dress up in a green hospital gown and a wig, wearing grotesque makeup to look like a corpse, and stand in the garden or by the beds of patients. She wanted them to think they were being haunted. It was psychological torture to mask the physical abuse. When the police dug up the lemon grove based on Helen's confession, they found Mrs. Gable's remains. Her skull was crushed. Susan survived, but she was never the same. The blow to her head left a permanent depression in her skull, a physical reminder of the night the ghost tried to kill her. She lived another few years, but the trauma ran deeper than the dementia. Even on days when she couldn't remember her own name, if she saw a lemon, she would weep. It makes you wonder, when we dismiss the ramblings of the elderly, when we attribute their fear to a decaying mind, are we missing the truth? Are they seeing things that aren't there, or are they the only ones seeing the monsters hiding in plain sight? If you have a loved one in care, check on them, listen to them, even the crazy stories. Because for Susan, the ghost story was a lie, but the horror was real.